whether you have hypo or hyperthyroid, the first thing to ask is, have I been changing any of my behaviors lately regarding the way I use my voice? Keep in mind, if you go to the doctor, the first thing they'll do is give you radioactive iodine and get you on that track, because they love putting people on thyroxine for life. It's one of those real good money makers for medicine, lifetime medication, and you can't go off it because you've lost your thyroid. You don't want to go there unless you have to. First, try changing your vocalization pattern. Try to become more of what you used to be.
In today's busy world, how can we find the inspiration, knowledge, and energy to live a healthy and empowered life? If we balance and harmonize our mind, exercise our body, live according to the laws of nature, and connect to spirit, can we find a way to heal, become our authentic self, and live our purpose with love? I am your hostess, Amy Fournier, and welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite. Welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. This show is about helping you to be more healthy and fit in mind, body, and spirit, as well as tap into your intuition, your true source of power, and awaken your authentic self. Is there a link between your voice and your thyroid? I bet you know at least one, if not multiple people that have quote-unquote thyroid issues. If they're women, they're probably hypo, which is an underactive thyroid, and they might even be hyper, or they might vacillate between the two. The thyroid is an extremely important gland in the body that regulates our metabolism as well as our calcium balance and controls a lot of the features of our body that are associated with our metabolism, like our thermoregulation, meaning how cold and hot you feel, our sweating capacity. It also controls or has a lot to do with our skin and our hair and our nails, and even because of the metabolism, our ability to stay lean or lose weight or gain weight or whatever it may be. And don't forget, super important with our overall energy level. And God knows everyone has energy issues these days, right? So if any of this is ringing a bell, you definitely want to check out this episode today with my guest, who happens to be a repeat guest, Sydney Ross Singer. Sydney had an amazing episode of my show, which you really need to check out, particularly if you're a woman. And if you know any women you love, send it to them, because it was one of the most important episodes of the show to date. And it was episode number 119 on the link, the undeniable link between bras and tight clothing and breast cancer. Please check out Sydney's first appearance, episode 119 on that. But today, Sydney's back because we're talking about another very important, not talked about link that makes a lot of sense. And it's the link between the way we use our voice, and even if we use our voice, literally and metaphorically, and the function of our thyroid gland. It's a fascinating episode. So we're going to take a holistic view of the thyroid and the health of the thyroid. You're going to learn Thyroid 101 here, which is important. And it might get you thinking a little bit. And guess what? There's only one way to find out if it's legit, is to try it. The beauty of it is you got nothing to lose. It doesn't cost anything, and you're not going to hurt yourself. There's no side effects other than you might speak your mind and make someone upset, but who cares? Speak your truth. Don't block up the energy in that area of your body, which can lead to a lot of problems, which you're going to hear about in this show. So strap on your seatbelts. We're going to have a great episode. And by the way, if you're interested in the voice and the holistic nature of our voice, both symbolically and literally, you might also want to check out episode 108 with my beautiful guest, holistic voice coach, Ruth Ratliff, and episode 81 with Dr. Cliff Oliver, where we talk about using the voice and the relationship with the polyvagal theory and the vagus nerve. Really interesting on the voice and stress. That's episode 81. And lastly, episode 80, the classic with Dr. Mario Martinez. And we talk about the cultural influences on our health, which is relevant to today's episode as well. So that's episode 80 with Dr. Martinez. All right, without further ado, let's join Sydney. Enjoy. And welcome back to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. Today is my guest, my friend, repeat guest, Sydney Ross Singer. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be back with you, Amy.
Are you still in Hawaii, Sydney?
Fortunately, yes. I just try to be here as much as I can.
Uh-huh. And you have a place there? Are you like a full-time resident, or what's the deal with that?
Yes, yeah. We've been living here for about 30 years,
Excellent.
and just leave for hurricanes and volcanic eruptions and try to come back and deal with it. But
Hmm.
it's a great place to live otherwise. You grow your own food. We live on
Yeah.
a nature preserve.
Wow.
Yeah, so all of we have, in fact, too much fruit. I think we're eating too much sugar because we have all this sugary tropical fruit. So we
Hmm.
have to just not eat it, and it's too tempting with all the great just treats everywhere. But anyway,
Hmm.
too much of anything is no good.
Like they say, fruit is nature's candy.
Oh, it's sure too much candy. You get addicted
Yeah.
to that stuff.
Yes, and unfortunately these days now it's actually genetically changed to be sweeter and bigger and
Oh,
plumper, and yeah, it's hard to resist. I mean, it truly is like candy, and oh boy, you're in candy land there, that's for sure.
hmm.
Where in Hawaii are you? What part?
Well, we're on the Big Island, on
Aha.
the East Coast. On this, it's the southeast coast near in the Puna district near the town
Mhm.
of Pahoa,
Mhm.
and it's a very volcanically active part of the island.
Ooh.
And yeah, ooh, but it living on the edge has its advantages and disadvantages, and the advantage is it's very remote and very wild and extreme. I mean, earthquakes and everything. And the other end of it, so that's the advantage. And the disadvantage is I have to come into town like now to
Hmm.
do a podcast with you because phone signal isn't that great.
Get
And I didn't
service.
want, so, you have to compromise, but it's really nice not to have to live dab in the middle of a culture all the time and just be with nature, which is what I prefer.
Especially nowadays. And isn't that just as all of life? We have to, prioritize and pick our battles and decide what are deal breakers, because life is a,
Exactly.
a constant compromise. But I think, the wiser we get involves knowing this is more important to me than that. Because I'm finding myself in a similar position. Like I want to be in nature as well, but then I also don't want to feel isolated. I need to somewhat have people around me. So everything is a compromise. It's a very interesting dance, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're not isolated in the sense that there are no other people around.
Mm-hmm.
That we do go. There are people at the beach, and there are people in Pahoa, but
Mm-hmm.
what we think of as a group of people, like 50 people, is a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, but it's and the kind of people that live around here are back to earth type people.
Yeah. They like
So
nature.
we're off the grid. So
Mm.
we have our own solar systems, and we catch rainwater for water,
Wow. Cool.
and and this time around, since the last time the volcano chased us out in 2018, and we just came back a year ago, but the this time we don't have any dogs or cats. We
Oh.
always have lots and lots of animals, but they're all domestic animals: sheep, goats, horses. Now we're just living with nature, and we're discovering a whole different uh, a whole different environment. When there are dogs, they keep away a lot of animals, and when there are
Yeah.
cats kill a lot of animals. So now
Mm-hmm.
we have lizards like all over the house. These beautiful, they're called um, gold dust day geckos. They've sort of
Wow.
moved in and have taken over a lot of this area because they're gorgeous, and they're like 30 or 40 on the table eating bananas that we put out
Come
for them.
on.
And
How
oh yeah,
cool. You pet
yeah, a cat
lizards.
wouldn't, you couldn't do that with a cat. And the same
Right.
with the birds. And then the pigs are the wildlife. We have lots of wild pigs, which actually are a mixed blessing,
Mm.
but that's the
They can be
wildlife.
loud. Pigs can be loud.
They could be destructive on the lawns, but on the other hand,
Uh,
they got to live too.
of
And,
course.
it's like having deer. They can come into your garden and mess it up
Mm-hmm.
also. So you just have to live with your wildlife.
That's a very, I never thought of that. Like you don't have the dogs and the cats, but now you have other things instead that you didn't have because you had dogs and cats.
Exactly. I think most
Right.
people don't understand. And
Right.
when we lived with dogs and cats, they were living in their true element. We discovered the real true relationships people have had with these domestic animals for millennia. I think we forget the fact that in a way, these animals are like technology from the past. They were domesticated to be so integrated with humans and to help us in so many things, hunting and protection and as well as companionship. Now they're just companionship for the most part for most people. But when you live in a place like we do, I mean, they deal with hunting and they protect you from other dogs and they protect your livestock. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff they do that you understand why people had dogs. Makes me feel sorry for those kind of dogs in an apartment building in the city, that they were like, this is a tool for life in the country where they were meant. So in other words, we're living in a modern, as an anthropologist, I just find this fascinating. We're living in a time when we have this old anachronistic technology that doesn't really fit anymore. Animals. Now we want robots to do what those animals did. The robots are going to be our laborers and they'll be there for us. And we're replacing old technology of like basically biological robots, which we've made a lot of our livestock and other animals into. And we want robots instead now. So, and this old technology that we've been living with, some people are so alienated, they don't even know how to deal with it anymore. So what we do with dogs now, we don't do what we used to do with dogs. Now they're companion animals and we use them in medical research, which is heinous and should be stopped. So we don't even understand our relationship with these. We're trying to redefine them in our modern world, which doesn't have a place for them anymore. Their whole role and context is gone, which was agriculture and hunter-gathering type stuff. Cats are great ratters. If you have rodents, you need cats. But if you don't have rodents, they also kill all the birds, all the lizards, and they play with them. So you just have like these killers that we live with.
Yeah, they torture them a little bit.
Well, we live with killers. It says a lot about who we are, that our best friends are dogs and cats, which are predators and very aggressive creatures. And I love them and I work for them. I actually run an organization that protects the Good Shepherd Foundation, that is an animal protection organization. So nice. I respect them for what they really are. I don't just romanticize them like I used to when I was an urbanite in New York City as a kid. Living with animals intimately, where they're part of your daily routine, and you get to understand them. And then of course there are cultures, they sleep with their cattle are in the house or their goats, because you got to protect your livestock and you put them in the house. Yeah. And of course we've done that here too. I mean, we've raised little orphaned animals. You got to bring them into the house with you, and you got to sleep with them and make them, because they need their mama, and so when you really live this lifestyle, it's incredible. I love this lifestyle.
Well, I love that you're literally closer to nature and source. So you're in your daily life. It's like, it's just part, like what you're explaining to us is, it's just kind of the whole vernacular of your life,
It's the lifestyle.
It's so different than the modern fancy technology. But the good news is, with the good backlash of all the post-pandemic stuff and hoopla, is not only did it unearth a lot of really bad stuff going on under the covers, but it made a lot of people realize how vulnerable we are to sustain our needs in providing for our food needs, clean water, community, our sense of self-sufficiency, so it woke up a lot of people. So that's the good thing. And so there's a lot more people like me. While I'm listening so interestedly, because this is where I think a lot of us are going. Like, really, because I want to have chickens. I want to have dogs. I want to get back to the land. I mean, I've always been a nature girl, but now I'm really like making it happen.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, yes. This is like, it's always been who I am, but now I actually have a whole dream plan that I've written out that I'm working on making it happen.
Oh, good. Well, that's who we all really are. Yeah. Modern times are very, very recent. I mean, you just go back 100 years, and it was people were still living without electricity in many places, in the United States even. So, it's, 1920s wasn't very advanced. There were a lot of people living in shacks and living very primitively. And even 100 years before that, you're talking about so much different relationship with nature. And so modern times have really alienated ourselves. We've become alienated from nature. And I think the goal has always been to dominate it and to transform it and to humanize it. And that's what we try to do. We try to humanize the world. And we want to do it with space and now and everything.
exploit it.
Absolutely.
And I mentioned in the introduction that your wonderful episode 119, Bras and Breast Cancer Link, how you are a medical anthropologist, and you've actually said, Sid, that don't let human culture get in the way of human nature. And I think that that's a beautifully powerful quote that's relevant to what we're talking about right now. And as a medical anthropologist, do you want to expand on that at all? Not letting culture get in the way of human nature.
Well, it's I could expand in a specific way if you
Yeah.
want to talk about specific examples. Is there something you want to focus on for today that we should
I
talk
do,
about?
because as you know, we're going to talk about particularly, there's so many people having problems with their thyroid, particularly hypothyroid, which is underactive.
Right.
A lot of people with hyper too, because we're also in a chronically anxious culture right now, and a lot of people vacillate between the two, like a ping pong ball, hyper and hypo. And we're going to talk about, because this show is about holistic health and wellness, mind, body, and spirit. We're going to talk about not only the physiological effects, but also the psychosomatic, energetic, and esoteric effects of that area of the body, the thyroid, the voice, the neck, the throat. So that will be the focus today. So in regard to my question, I'm glad that you clarified. What do you think that we're doing in our culture that is basically screwing up the way that our thyroid functions, as well as our whole physiology between our upper chest and our lower, the lower part of our head, so our neck, shoulders, upper chest, back?
Well, okay, that's interesting. So let's step back. The way to think about these things is like make believe you're just watching a movie about your culture and you're not part of it, and you step back and think, what do we do to that part of our body first physically? If people wear neckties or anything tight around the throat, it actually can compress right on the thyroid. So, because let's first define where the thyroid is. It's right around your voice box. So if you want to find that, you go to your Adam's apple, and that's the cartilage sticking out in your throat. And that bump, that's your Adam's apple. And just below it and to the sides of it are your thyroid. It's literally like a butterfly shape around your voice box.
It wraps around.
It wraps around it. And it's right. You can actually massage your thyroid if you wanted to, right over here in your throat. And so it's touchable. So anything that's going to be tight around your neck, like neckties, or chokers, if women wear choker chains or things like that, anything tight.
Turtlenecks,
or if you're
tight turtlenecks. That's happened to me before.
Scuba diving is a very tight neck seal. Once you're aware of tightness, like we talked about with bras and breast cancer, I am aware of tightness. So I with garments. So when it comes to anything you wear tight around your neck, you'll end up feeling like you'll see your neck veins stick out. Because the veins going down your neck, if you just put any constriction around your throat, that'll immediately send out your neck veins, because the compression will back up the fluid from your brain. So you're going to increase your brain pressure and your eye pressure and all of that with neckties. They've done research showing that neckties actually can increase glaucoma risk, which is eye pressure.
Makes sense. I mean, it's totally logical.
Because your brain, it shuts off the drainage from your brain, and it just gets pressurized by your heart, the arteries, but the veins are easier to compress because they have less pressure. So when you put anything around a collar around you, that collar, and this, by the way, would apply to dogs as well. So that's why you probably don't want to have a dog collar. I would get rid of I hate dog collars and I hate chokers. Get a harness for your dog and train them with treats and other ways. There's other ways of training them with chokers, which is the old fashioned way. And anything, even if it's not a choker chain, if it holds your dog back by the throat, when they pull against your chain on that collar, they're pulling right into their thyroid. I mean, it's not going to be good for them and you can hear them cough sometimes when these dogs are pulling in because the people don't know how to control them. Get a harness for your dog. Choker, anything around the neck is physiologically damaging to your dog's thyroid. And it's just not a good thing to choke anybody, besides being cruel, okay? So that's just my recommendation on all of these things apply to animals too. In fact, a lot of animals have the same diseases as humans now because they're living like we are. We're feeding, they're the same lifestyle that we have. I mean, they're eating similar foods and in a lot of ways, and they're living in a similar environment with similar pollution. And so they suffer similar diseases because we impose our lifestyles on these animals. So that's the first thing I would think: mechanical interference with your throat. The second thing I would worry about with the thyroid, which we'll talk today. Well, there are vibrational injuries to your thyroid. Well, before I get to that, let me just, as a general category, say there's so many things that can create a goiter, which is a swelling of your thyroid, which is like your iodine levels. Your thyroid makes thyroxine, which is it's a major hormone in your body that controls your metabolic rate. And if you have too much of it, you get hyperactive and you become intolerant to heat, you lose weight, it's like your whole furnace and whole metabolism is turned up. If you have that's hypo, which means low amount. Hypo is low. Thyroid means too low an amount of that hormone, and then you're lethargic, you're just turned down. You get cold and sensitive. Your appetite could be suppressed, but you're also probably gaining weight. Yeah. But it's like your whole body is turned down. Yes. So that's like hyper and hypothyroid. And a lot of things can cause that related to like iodine, because iodine is a major component of the thyroid hormone thyroxine. It has iodine in it. So when you are deficient in iodine, as people were in the United States 100 years ago, iodine deficiency was like everywhere. That's why they put iodine in salt. That's why they have iodized salt. And that got pretty much rid of the goiters that people. A goiter is a swelling of the thyroid. It actually like grows to try to increase the amount of tissue that can absorb iodine, like to become even, because there's so little. So it's like trying to get it, and it multiplies itself to catch whatever iodine it can. So it grows and gets big. And but that doesn't happen anymore with iodine supplementation in our diet. Otherwise, the biggest sources of iodine are like seafood and it's basically a seafood type of a thing, and seaweed, and those are big sources of iodine. And a lot of people who are in the middle of Midwest, I mean, they don't have access to that. So they tended to be low in iodine. And if the soil was low in iodine, you get deficiencies. And there were a lot of those types of deficiencies. So iodine is very important for thyroid function. Too much is as bad as too little. They both can cause problems. So you need just the right amount. And by the way, iodine, they get, it's a separate issue, but when there's a nuclear reaction, since that's in the news, I might as well make it topical. When they have a nuclear detonation, there's radioactive iodine that's produced. And that's why they give people iodine pills to basically saturate your thyroid with iodine, so that if you're exposed to radioactive iodine, you're already saturated and you won't absorb as much. So it's like an effort to avoid absorbing radioactive iodine. So that's why people get iodine pills. And when there was some concern with Fukushima, when that went off in Japan several years ago, the nuclear reactor there was a meltdown, and all that radiation was released. People were getting iodine pills, and that's why people were concerned about it. But you don't want to overdo iodine, because there probably was some hypothyroidism that was created because of that iodine pills that people were unnecessarily taking. But anyway, that's the event. So other things can be goitrogens. A goitrogen is something that generates a goiter, and there are lots of chemicals that can do that as well. So chemical exposures, iodine, those are all, there's a lot of things that affect your thyroid. One thing that affects the thyroid that nobody else was talking about, that we discovered, that that I wrote about and I tried getting interest in, and I've seen now that there have been 2 studies to confirm it, but not enough, because there's no money in this. And it's something that actually was known like 3,000 years ago by Ayurvedic medicine. So it's not like this is something that is a high-tech new innovation. It's the realization that the thyroid is stimulated by your voice. And that's something that modern medicine has no clue about. And they really should.
Hey, just cutting in here. I really hope you're enjoying the show because I want to share with you something that's changed my life. It's called the Core Harmonizer. And I've got my friend Ross here, and he's going to talk about what the Core Harmonizer is, and most importantly, why it's changing people's lives, not just my life, but pretty much everybody that's exposed to this beautiful piece of technology, what they're saying to Ross. What are they saying to you, Ross?
Well, thank you, Amy. First off, the Core Harmonizer uses light, music, and nested geometries to create a coherent environment. And when people are in this environment, sometimes some pretty awesome things can occur. I talked to a woman the other day who was dealing with the aftermath of a stroke. She had recently purchased a Core Harmonizer, and she called up to tell me that she was doing quite well. And she was very optimistic. So this technology helped assist her in that. And the beautiful thing is she did this herself. So she was in a coherent field environment, and she raised her own vibration. You know, she chose to do it. It's an active thing. But this technology really helps facilitate that. And it's really important. A lot of us are struggling with a lot of big things, and having the support around us constantly is very, very helpful and necessary.
100%. And that's why we had you on my show. That's why we did a whole episode of it, number 105. If you want to check out a deeper dive with Ross, what we're talking about here, coherence, what it is. And it's a big part of my show because this is about a lifestyle, right? It's holistic health and wellness, inside and out, how we can empower ourselves. So this is a perfect fit for my offering to the world, for you and I to collaborate, because this is a way that people can empower themselves to create a beautiful, harmonized, relaxing, calm environment to help raise their vibration and get them on a frequency that's just a higher resonance, just help you feel more at peace. We're all looking for peace. Check out more in episode 105. You can get yours at a special discount on my website. Under the recommended products page, just enter the code FitAmyTV10 and you save 10%. Thanks, Ross.
Now, I went to medical school, and some of the things that I learned when I learned the human body, the way it's taught is it's taught as if there's no real rhyme or reason for the way things are, because they can't accept the concept of an intelligent design to the body, because that implies some sort of supernatural being maybe, and that makes scientists uncomfortable because their model has to avoid that. So they therefore have to have answers to things that the body can't be made. It has to be random mutation. So when you look at typical Darwinian evolution, it's all random. So nothing seems to be by plan. I don't see it that way personally. And I think that however the body was formed, there was a design involved. And things are where they are for a reason, even if we can't understand them with our current knowledge. So when I see something, doctors, when they see an appendix and they don't know why we have one, and they figure we can't understand it, they will say it's okay to remove it surgically. If it gets infected, or even preventatively, you're not going to need it. It's a vestigial organ, they call it, from evolution, from a time when we did have the appendix was used, but now it's not. And it's sort of still there, like your wisdom teeth, which they remove. And they'll even, you remove your tonsils, saying you really don't need those. So modern medicine, if it doesn't see a purpose for it because of its own limited stupidity, it has unlimited stupidity, it's limited knowledge, then what it ends up doing is it just writes it off and figures it's not necessary. And that's just not true. The way I look at it is there's a reason for the anatomy. The anatomy of the body, the things that we have, and its relationship to one another within the body has a purpose for it. So when I learned that the thyroid, which is sort of a gelatinous type organ, because it stores thyroxine in the organ itself in a gel type form. So imagine like a Jello type jelly. And it's, why would the body want to put this vitally important organ in your on your throat, first of all, where it's exposed, not in your abdomen where it's protected, or in your chest? I mean, it could be near your heart, it could be under your ribs. If it's such a vitally important organ, why have it there? And why on the voice box, which is vibrating like crazy?
Yes.
Well, then I thought, gee, vibration. I wonder if vibration can affect the thyroid. So I looked up, and there are studies that show occupational injury to the thyroid in people that work in high vibrational occupational settings, like in factories where there's banging of machinery and loud noises. All of those noises are vibration, and the thyroid was picking it up. And the vibration of the thyroid caused it to get damaged. So, and if you damage the thyroid and over mechanically shake it up and stimulate it, it's going to release thyroxine. So you're going to get hyperthyroidism from mechanical stimulation of your thyroid. And I also know from massage therapists that I've spoken to over the years that they say you're not supposed to massage the thyroid for a person that has a thyroid condition, because you can overstimulate it and create too much thyroxine release by actual mechanical stimulation. All right, so this is pretty amazing. You have an organ on your throat that's responsible for basal metabolic rate, like an essential setting point for your whole body. And without it, you would die. And this organ is on a vibrating other organ, and that actually stimulates it. Well, what does medicine think about what stimulates the thyroid? According to medicine, if you open up any medical textbook and you look up thyroid stimulation, it would mention thyroid stimulating hormone, which comes from the pituitary gland in your brain. And right next to that is an area of the brain called the hypothalamus, which secretes a substance called thyroid releasing factor, thyroid hormone releasing factor, okay? And that tells the pituitary to release the thyroid stimulating hormone, which then goes into your bloodstream, goes to your thyroid, and tells the thyroid to make thyroxine. The thyroid makes thyroxine, goes into the bloodstream with the thyroxine is secreted, goes into the bloodstream, the blood goes back to your brain, the brain sees more thyroxine in the blood, and the hypothalamus then lowers its stimulation of the pituitary lowers its stimulation of the thyroid, and the thyroid calms down, and that's how it controls it. And that's a feedback loop, and it was like the first endocrinology feedback loop ever discovered. So they use that in medicine all the time when they teach endocrinology and feedback loops of how the brain controls other organs in the body with stimulating hormones that stimulate the organ to make its hormones that then go back to the original stimulator and say, we've made it, it's okay, you can turn it down now, and it modulates and turns it, and it keeps it at the right level. If it's too low, it gets stimulated. If it's too high, it gets reduced. That's how it's supposed to work. They never ever think of any other alternative method of thyroid hormone stimulation. That's it in medicine. And if you went to a doctor with high thyroid, they will give you a test to see how active your thyroid is by giving you radioactive iodine that then will be absorbed by the thyroid, and they'll see how much is absorbed because your thyroid will be radioactive for a while. They tell you to stay away from people a little bit while you're radioactive. Yikes. And it lasts a couple of weeks. And if you absorb a lot or a little, it tells them how active or inactive your thyroid might be. If they decide your thyroid is too active or if they want to get rid of it, they give you more radioactive iodine because it just so happens that's the way they burn the thyroid off. So the radioactivity is like little bullets that shoot through your thyroid. Unfortunately, if you realize your thyroid is right here on your throat, and imagine radioactive rays shooting around, your brain is right there, and it's probably not the best thing, and your heart's right there. Probably not the best thing to have radioactivity right there in your throat, but that's modern medicine for you. God. So then once they get rid of your thyroid, which they call ablating the thyroid, once your thyroid is ablated, they'll then give you thyroid stimulating hormone, which is normally it used to be from pigs, and now it's, I believe they're giving genetically engineered human thyroid hormone, thyroxine. They don't give thyroid stimulating hormone, I'm sorry, they give you thyroxine, which is the actual hormone the thyroid makes. So they'll either give you pig hormone, or they used to do, or now they almost exclusively getting GMO, genetically modified, made in either bacteria or yeast, and then you're on that for the rest of your life. So basically they substitute with a pill something that was a very finely controlled mechanism, and you have to go to the doctor regularly to make sure you're not having too much or too little, because you're not modulating it, and you're swallowing a pill with hormone. That's another interesting thing. Hormones are in your blood at nanomolar levels. Nanomolar is 10 to the minus ninth moles. The concentration of that is like almost parts per billion. Okay, very small. When you take a pill, you're dealing with milligrams or even grams of a substance that is like huge dosage, and you're swallowing it and absorbing who knows how much. So normally in your body, we have a very, very low concentration of hormones that have a very big impact on things. And when we take hormone pills, we're taking large doses in our intestines, so we're absorbing a variable amount, so you don't even know how much you're going to get. And it could change from day to day, from diet, from what you're eating, everything. So it's all guesswork. And then you spend the rest of your life hoping that your thyroid levels are okay. And then you're stuck with your doctor, and they love you. And I don't even know if they send you Christmas cards, but that's basically it for the rest of your life. Get ready for doctor visits. So I was thinking, okay, could it be that they're missing something here? Because of course they make a lot of money on this scheme. So, I mean, the way it's set up, they make a lot of money on, and it's a huge problem. What if it's related to vocalization? Well, I had an interesting anecdotal experience. I wrote about this, and here in Hawaii, a guy had recently retired. He was a cameraman for high profile stars doing concerts, and he was a real boss guy. And when people drove by his oceanfront home on our very small single lane highway and were going very too fast, he would yell at them, and he would say, "Slow down." And he did this for months. He was from California, so he had LA energy, and he was in Hawaii, totally wrong energy. So he was like type A guy in a type Z place, and he was trying to tell everybody to slow down, and he was screaming at them. And I didn't see him at one point, and I saw him after months, and I said to him, "Where have you been?" And he said he was sick. He had a thyroid problem, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor ablated his thyroid, and he told me all about that. And I said, you know, I recently had this theory I've been developing about the thyroid and vibration, and that when people yell, they overstimulate the thyroid and make hyperthyroidism. And I think all they need to do is stop yelling and let their thyroid heal and sort of be quiet for a while, and then they should recover. I think they just overstimulate it, and it's a temporary thing. But then they go to the doctor, and the doctor makes it a permanent thing. So he had this look on he was wondering. And as I was talking to him, a car came by, and he reflexively yelled, "Slow down." And I just told him this, and he realized he just did it.
Wow.
And the light went on, and oh my God, I saw this guy's face like, oh, he knew it. And he now didn't have a thyroid anymore. And he now understood why he had that problem. And his doctor never mentioned it, because his doctor never even imagined it. It's not in any medical book. So I just wrote about it, and then I started talking about it and doing some shows. And while I was on shows, I had people calling in and telling me, one woman was a nun.
Anecdotal evidence.
Well, that's what you're going to do at this level.
Mm-hmm.
One was a nun, and she said she had to go into, in her training, she couldn't speak for like a year or two, and like in seclusion or whatever they call it. And she developed hypothyroidism. And then I started to connected with vocal people who were actually singers. And I was wondering how they dealt with this. Was there a problem, like opera singers? You'd think they'd blow their thyroid. But, and I was discovering that a lot of singers did have thyroid problems. But what was really interesting, I think singers learn how to vibrate it, not in your neck, but down deeper. Like they do diaphragmatic breathing, from the diaphragm. So I've learned, you can scream at somebody, and you could either scream really high and your throat like really hurts, or you could do it low and it doesn't go in your throat. It's like it saves you. There are ways of putting the sound in your body where the focus is not on your thyroid. And I think singers know that professionally, and how to project their voice without destroying their thyroids. However, when you, so I contacted there's a place, I think it's called the Voice Institute in New York, and they deal with singers, and they're worried about the effect of the thyroid on the voice because of the intimate association of the two. There are nerves that supply both the vocal cords and right nearby supply the thyroid. And when they go in and do thyroid surgery, they sometimes can cut the wrong nerve, and they can cause people to have voice changes and real problems. So, and if you get a goiter or other problem, it's impinging on your vocal box. So they've been studying the effect of the thyroid on the voice. And I said, have you ever thought of the effect of the voice on the thyroid? Like maybe we need to stimulate the thyroid more when people aren't talking enough. And maybe they need to understimulate their thyroid and talk less if they're overdoing it. And he thought, well, I never heard about this. And he wasn't interested because they're not interested. I mean, just because it's a good idea doesn't mean people are going to do anything about it if they don't make money and it's not what they do. So I then just kept on doing outreach. And since I've seen some articles coming out, 2 studies, they were done on tissue culture. They exposed it to sound waves, and these thyroid cells actually secreted thyroxine under the influence of vibrational sound waves. So because it made sense to them too. They may have read my stuff, I don't know, but it's sort of logical. Why would it be on the thyroid, on the voice box? Couldn't the voice box affect the thyroid? And this would be an easy therapy. So what what I'm discovering and getting back to the culture cause, in our culture, a lot of people, and probably in a lot of cultures, when a bad thing happens, you stop talking sometimes. You get depressed. You might be in your mid-ages and you lose your spouse from divorce or death, and you are like suddenly you're not talking as much, you're not socializing the way you used to. There are cultural things that can change the way you use your voice. Conversely, you might be in relationship problems or work problems where you're yelling a lot, you're angry, and and lots of stress has been associated with thyroid problems, but stress is also associated with yelling. So what I tell people to try to do, and what I think happens is, if a woman, let's say, because they have a higher rate of hypothyroidism than men, if a woman starts to get socially isolated in older age and then become like a displaced homemaker type person, and she's sort of depressed and alone, and in our culture today, we don't talk on the phone like we used to. We text. We email, we're not as vocal, although now with video chats, I think we might be getting a little more of that, but there's still a lot of less verbalization. If there's less verbalization, there'll be less vocal stimulation of the thyroid. We don't sing like we used to. When you look at old movies from the 30s and 40s and even 50s, people used to sing. When we didn't have as much instant entertainment with the push of a radio or computer, we had people singing. They would do this type of entertainment with them in the evenings. There would be lots of people singing songs all the time. It wasn't an embarrassing thing. We sang anthems together. We sang all sorts of things together. Singing has left our lives. So we are less vocal. So you'd imagine we'd be a more hypothyroid place. And I think what happens is, and this is my guess, but the way I'm understanding it is, when you are developing as a child, the brain thyroid axis is of course happening, but so is your voice. And if you're a very vocal type of person, naturally, it's just your tendency is to make noise more than some other person, then your brain, the components, so that the 2 factors are vocalization and the brain input. The more you vocalize, the less brain input's needed. The less you vocalize, the more brain input would be needed, but your body would reach some sort of an equilibrium where your voice level, if you're a soft-spoken person, you might have higher TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone levels, because you're more reliant on the brain for stimulation because you don't stimulate it that much. You're more of an introverted, soft-spoken person. If you're an extrovert, you're constantly talking, you're a salesperson, you're on the phone all the time, you can bet you have a low TSH because you're compensating most vocalization. So there would be these, and that makes sense. For an organ that is so critically important to your body, the thyroid, you'd expect you'd have more than one way of controlling it. That just is logical to me for an intelligent design body, which it clearly is, to put it on things where it belongs. I mean, anatomy tells you function a lot. If you know how things are made, it tells you what they do, because they're made that way because they do things a certain way. It's all one, you don't. So I think then if you understand anatomy, you really understand physiology to some degree. And you shouldn't ignore these relationships of body parts that medicine thinks it ignores because they don't think a relationship is significant. It wasn't intended. It was arbitrary and almost capricious by nature. And if it happened to be an advantage, selectively, biologically selective advantage, then it lasts. And if it wasn't, then it doesn't last. And that's all there is to it. And they can't see any relationship otherwise, which gives them a hard time explaining a whole bunch of social things and that it doesn't explain. I mean, evolution is good in some things, but it's not a perfect theory. But anyway, I can go all over the place with all of these things, but so that's the thyroid in a nutshell. So if a person wants to do a self-study, if you have a thyroid problem, if you're hyperthyroid, you could look up the symptoms of hypo and hyper, and then ask yourself, am I talking less than I used to? That's normal. Or am I talking more than I used to? Then try to go back to your norm. That's what your body is used to. If you're hyperthyroid, stop over vocalizing. If you're hypothyroid, then maybe you need to vocalize more. Read out loud. Sing to yourself. Spend maybe an hour or two a day with more vocalization and see how that makes you feel. And after about a week or two, you may actually feel higher energy, which you may feel anyway, but more vocalization might mean you breathe more and more oxygenation. This isn't, controlling all variables, but the point is you should try, if you're low in thyroid, try vocalizing more. If you're high in thyroid, try vocalizing less.
Okay. Wow. Excellent. That's quite a little synopsis. Excellent. I'd like to also introduce the element of the esoteric and some of the energetic qualities of this area of the body. Most of my audience is probably familiar with the term chakras, which is an energy center. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of chakras in the body. Most people are aware of the major 7 areas in the body of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, from the base of the spine up to the crown of the head. There are kind of 10 primary ones, but in most Western societies, we talk about the 7. So the area that we're talking about today, the throat and the neck area, it was also called the neck chakra in some regards, is the throat chakra, and it's it's pronounced, if I say this right, Visuddha. The Visuddha is the Sanskrit term, and it actually means to purify, or purification is the interpretation of the Sanskrit word. And it's the energetic center of the body, as you're mentioning, that's responsible for our communication in the world, not only our speaking, but also our listening and our hearing, because it's a reciprocal relationship. It's a two-way relationship. We have 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? So some people think we should listen twice as much as we speak. But what you're talking about today, Sid, is us having the self-awareness to know how much in my life am I in balance between my expression and my speaking and my energy out, and then my listening and taking in and processing the energy in, which is important factor for all of us. And I think, some people are born a certain way, right? Some people just talk a lot, or they have a loud voice, or some people are, as you mentioned, are more introverted, and that's all beautiful. But at the end of the day, we all need to express our soul in some way. And if we don't, we're going to have problems. We're going to have imbalances. We're going to get some sort of sickness or discomfort or lack of ease, if you will, dis-ease. So this area of the body is the center of communication. The element is sound. Each chakra of the body has an element. It has a planet. It has a sound. It has a noise. It has a nerve plexus. The planet for this chakra is Jupiter. The plexus, the major nerve plexus, is the cervical ganglia. So it's through the neck. And it's also our willpower and our sense of choice. So if we think, okay, why would willpower and our communication and self-expression and our sense of choice be all involved energetically in this area of our life, both symbolically and literally? I'd like to pose that to you as an expert, Sid, in this area. Well, why do you think nature did that, or the Great Spirit, that this area is, again, our self-expression, our sense of communication, listening, speaking, our sense of ourself, our sense of choice, and our willpower, our personal will. Why is this all tied up with the voice and the element of sound?
Wow, that's a really good question. It's a profound question. And
Yeah.
I mean, music plays into it as well if you're dealing with sound.
Mm-hmm.
And music, you know, it moves us and it vibrates us and we move back and harmonize with it. So, and we express ourselves with our voice. So I could see how it would be involved in choice and everything. I mean, your throat is you breathe through it. It's the conduit between your brain and your body.
Yes.
It's a very important part of your body. And, you can protect it with your chin. I mean, it is a little protected. You could tuck your chin and protect that part of your, if you need to. So that's good. That because it's out there. Otherwise, you can imagine you could be choked. It is kind of vulnerable.
Yeah, I never, when you said that, I really had to pause because I've never considered that. Why in God's name would it's such an important area of our body be so vulnerable, not protected inside the rib cage like some of our other vital organs? Very, very interesting.
Well, I have a theory about that, but it's really kind of weird.
Is it out there?
It's out there. Do you want me to tell it to you?
Of course.
I'm
going to ask you. Now that you said that, I'm definitely asking you.
Well, I don't know the cause, what caused, I think biological systems of animals really seem very much like a machine to me. I mean, if I was to be science fiction, okay, and I realize this is science fiction,
mm-hmm.
I think we are biological machines that were probably created by some other intelligent life form that can reproduce itself, take care of itself. DNA is our internal hard drive. It takes care of what we do. And then we have the culture is our apps that we upload, the software. But we have a hardware that we share with so many other animals. It's like we're just one model of a type.
Our DNA is very much like a lot of other species' DNA. Mm-hmm.
And we're all made very similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that there's another organ. This is what made me think about what I'm going to say. Why are the testicles where they are? They're pretty important. Why are they just hanging down there? You ladies have ovaries protected nicely in your abdomen. We got them hanging out there. Now you combine that with being a farmer. And what's the advantage of testicles hanging outside?
Cool them off.
Cut them off.
Huh?
Cut them off. When you're a farmer, you don't want too many males. So you need to be able to castrate your animals.
Oh, wow.
You tie them off with a band.
Wow.
And that's very easy to do. And I know now as a farmer, real life, with lots of sheep that were reproducing. Mm-hmm. You have so many males. They're fighting each other.
Yeah.
They're raping the females. They'll actually kill females. Too many roosters on a chicken is not good. What do you do when you have too many animals? They'll try to kill each other. They'll do what they can. But the fact is, as a good husbandry person, you control your numbers. You control your population. So what you do is you castrate them. So when you look at these domestic animals that we live with, they pretty much have easy to castrate testicles and easy to control. They live fine. You can cut off with primitive. You just tie a band around the testicles and that's how they fall off. They wither away and fall off.
Oh my goodness.
You don't even need surgery. So it's very old tech. So what I'm wondering is humans have this too. So I'm wondering if that's the way we were meant to be controlled. I mean, we are these biological robots that have a function that we all serve, that we're made to serve, that we work together in some coordinated way within nature, where animals occupy ecosystems that they need one another, and we cannot survive without eating certain things. I mean, essential, isn't that kind of weird too? That you can't survive without essential vitamins from somewhere else, without essential amino acids that you can't make.
And you can't thrive without the ingredient love. You can survive, but you can't thrive. It's actually actually a syndrome in babies, a failure to thrive.
Oh, yes.
Babies that aren't touched or hugged or anything.
Well, that's a sign of the fact that we're social organisms.
Love is an ingredient.
We're not individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
And when we're not individuals, we are part of a bigger whole that we're all obviously connected to,
And
because
we're
we can't.
social creatures.
Right. The question is, where do we come from, and are we machines? And
Right. Interesting theory, Sid.
well, in which case that explains why the thyroid might be there, because you can cut throats that way too. And it seems like if you want to dispose of control, I know it's harsh.
No, but hey, it's
reality. It can be harsh.
Yeah.
And when you're a farmer and you're dealing with animals, how do you kill them? And how do you control them? And humans are very similar in structure. So if there was a more superior organism that controls our kinds of organisms, or people controlled each other, we castrate. The Catholic Church made castrato singers of males. That takes us back to singing. I wonder if they had any thyroid issues, but they had, they castrated boys to keep their voices high, and that was into the 20th century.
Yeah.
So it's not like we never did that. We castrated men lots for that, made eunuchs to serve in harems and to serve in other purposes, and there was a whole culture of that. So anyway, it's kind of weird.
Well, first, but I just want to say that I really appreciate first of all, your courage, even saying such a theory. Really, it's great. And, for the audience, I think it's important, even if it made you uncomfortable, what Sid's talking about is it's important that we all keep an open mind. You might, even if you're listening going, that's nuts or that's barbaric, but you know what? It's good for us to hear these things, because we have to expand our minds and even entertain something as possible, without just quick to judge and cut it off because it makes you uncomfortable to hear it or it sounds Looney Tunes. Who cares? So I like.
Well, that's a great segue into the taboo topics that I wanted to talk with you about.
Well, actually, hold on now. Put a pen in that, because we gotta back up a little bit, because there's a couple more things I want to address with the fifth chakra, which is very important, because and it's to your point about the relationship with the testicles and the throat. Because in my training in biogeometry, which is the quality of science, and how shape determines function in the body, and the womb, and the womb and the uterus is the vesica Pisces, which is it's basically an oval shape. And if we think about the shape of the womb and the second chakra, which is the pelvis, the sexual organs, every chakra in the body is paired except for the heart. And you mentioned it, because the heart is the gateway. It's the bridge between the physical animal body, which is the lower chakras, 1, 2, and 3, and then the ascended chakras, which are 5, 6, 7, which are the upper chakras, which is the more spiritual. So the heart is the middle point chakra, which connects the physical matter body, the human body, with the spiritual ascended body. And all the chakras are paired. So it's said that chakra 2, the sacral chakra, which again is the sexual organs and the womb and the uterus, is paired with the fifth chakra, which we're talking about today, which is the throat and the neck. And if you think about the shape of the larynx, which is the voice box, it's similar to that oval shape, which is very similar to the womb. And you mentioned about, well, we all know when you're nervous, your voice goes up, or maybe you might talk faster. We all know our mental state affects our voice. We know that. And you have a lump in your throat, we have expressions for it, right? So it's interesting to think how I've heard in my studies of women's mysteries and women's health, that it's said that if you really want to stand in your power as a woman, you want to make sure, and I'm sure this applies for men, you want to make sure you speak from your second chakra, which is your womb, your uterus, not from your fifth chakra. And you mentioned that, how singers,
you do that?
How are they doing that? Like, how are singers not blowing out their thyroids? Well, they're probably figuring out a way to pull their power up from their core, their lower chakras, up, resonating through the chamber of the rib cage and the lungs and out. And that's truly where our power is. So I think that's an important thing for us to talk about, because the fifth chakra is known to be a masculine chakra. It actually is symbolic of the father, whereas the second chakra is the feminine chakra, and the fourth is feminine as well. They alternate. So it's just interesting for our discussion today for everyone to kind of wrap around holistically this idea of this area of the body, which is the mouth, the jaw, the neck. Do you have a tight neck? Do you grind your teeth? Do you have swallowing problems? Do you have voice problems? Do you have tension headaches? These are all areas associated energetically with this area of your body. So the question for the audience to ponder is, to Sydney's point earlier, are you speaking too much? Are you speaking too loudly? Are you screaming too much? Or maybe are you not using your voice? Are you not speaking your truth? Is there a place in your life where you're not standing in your integrity, that your heart and your soul is not happy and wants to express itself? Something you feel is an injustice going on in your world and you're being silent. It's actually one of the worst crimes you can commit, is to be silent when you need to speak for an injustice. So these are all imbalances in this area energetically of our body. So the body is going to emote the symptoms that the soul can't express. So, and that goes for every chakra in your body. So this is a big reason, Sid, why I wanted you on the show again today, because you have so many areas of expertise. And again, that 119 blew the world open with your bra and breast cancer link. And everyone, please, if you're a woman or love one, you got to listen to that show.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to change your life. It's changed mine and many others. And you have so much interesting work as a medical anthropologist that, again, the effects of our culture on our mind, bodies, and spirits that people are just not talking about, but thank God you are. Because, I mean, go back and listen to this episode again, everybody, and think of all the ramifications of your life for someone you know, and we're not being told this stuff, Sid. So let's circle back. You mentioned some great things. Okay, so let me ask you this, Sid. So for somebody who might be depressed or socially isolated, they're not talking and chatting as much as they'd like to, the prescription is what? They can hum, they can sing. Let's go through some more.
Well, you could read out loud. You can read to somebody else.
Chanting.
Yes, that would be good. Anything you can even massage your throat if you want. Try that.
Yes, massage.
Just physical massaging of the throat. They probably someday they might make a vibration device that you put on your throat and it vibrates it for you. But I think the ideal vibration is going to be your normal voice. I think your body would tune in to what the frequency would be at your tone for your voice.
And vocalization is an important way of detoxifying and releasing energy from the body. Because when you're not speaking your truth, you're holding intention. Your body's not its intention. Like it's not relaxed. So by speaking or expressing yourself, in other words, like maybe journaling even is speaking, and maybe even if no one ever receives it, it's a way of you expressing yourself. Or would you say, Sid, in your opinion, would something like dance, dancing from your soul, expressing, or art therapy, those are expressions. Is that adequate, or it's not vibrating the thyroid, so that would not count?
Well, I see where you're getting with this. It's like you're saying that if the cause is some sort of psychological stressors in your life,
lack of expression,
then if you express yourself, then maybe your thyroid will just start feeling better because you're not holding that stress in your throat. Maybe, but I think I'm just being more mechanical about it. And you're talking about
literally
very real subtle things. And I think subtle things are extremely important. And one of the things, as another point to make, which I've been, when we weren't going to go into acrylamide today, but one of the things that made me realize was how low doses or little amounts of a bad thing are cumulative. And that's the problem. A lot of we were talking about subtle things, and I'm saying subtle things really are important, very important, because they add up, and you don't realize it when it's happening, but then over time, it has a big impact. So I agree with you about these subtle field issues and chakra issues and mental issues. I think a vibration, though, as a mechanical issue becomes, it's just, I don't know how you can get around that. It's like with the bra.
It's
like
literal.
With bra and breast. You can say with the breast issue, that women
Yeah.
hold in their emotion in their breasts, and breasts are so emotional as organs, and they feed babies and they need so much. And if a woman feels suppressed in her womanhood, it'll affect her breasts. And there have been suggestions that attitude can cause breast cancer issues. But I don't think that would get rid of having a good attitude, would get rid of wearing a tight bra. Because there's mechanical issues, I think, are like order of magnitude more impactful. But that doesn't mean that what you're saying is not impactful. I think that you need to do all of that.
I agree. Well said. Well said. I totally agree. It all matters, but maybe it's a matter of degree. It's the same thing as, like you said, with iodine. You know, it's like if you're not taking enough iodine, you're gonna have a thyroid problem. No matter how much you're balancing your expression and your voice and your will, and
right. That's right.
That's, so that's why it's mind, body, spirit, right? We have to address all these things. I guess too, it's a matter, like I always tell people, you got to be your own detective and kind of like check off the boxes till you find the solution to what's going on. Like if you've dialed in your diet and you've dialed in your sleep and your water and your exercise and you're still having a thyroid problem, maybe you got to look at, am I not speaking my truth, or am I yelling too much, or you know what I'm saying? Like it's like check off all the boxes until you get to the solution, maybe,
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, it's your response. We're not in a culture that makes it easy to be healthy.
Yes.
And you have to say no and be able to look at yourself and be honest and and be willing to make the changes. One thing you say mind, body, spirit. Mm-hmm. One thing that I think is important, I agree with that. I think, however, that by framing them the way we do with concepts that are like there's mind, there's body, and there's spirit.
Separated.
We forget the fact that they are one, and Indeed. That you can't affect one without the other. So you can't have a healthy body with your spirit's not good. It's as you get healthy, your spirit is going to change. It's like it's all together. As you get a bad attitude, you get a bad body. It's one. It is one thing, your spirit, body, and everything. So you can't think of it as separate things. And I think they'll evolve together. As you get healthier, your attitude does change. Like when we talked last time in the other episode, when women get rid of their bras, their attitudes about themselves change. Their whole self-esteem, their lives
feeling of
transform.
Freedom, literally and figuratively free.
From one thing that then affects you on a physical, spiritual, emotional, all sorts of levels.
But isn't everything the ripple effect? That's how all of life is. We are all the pebble that gets dropped in the water and ripples out, That's why being selfish and taking care of your own needs has to come first, because you are then going to go and influence your whole world. And if everyone did that, how much nicer the ripples would be.
Absolutely. I agree.
And I want to get, just as we come to the close here, Sid, because we gave some great tips for anybody with hypothyroid, which is very common these days. But we have to talk just quickly about tips for hyper, which is excessive overuse of the thyroid, perhaps from screaming or yelling or talking too much and not listening to other people, and rushing. Rushing is one of the negative aspects of this chakra area of the body, always kind of rushing and having being very stubborn and fixed in the way you're thinking or living, and like a stiff neck.
People like that will tend to yell, and when they're aggravated. And they're not looking at that component. So when they do this research, they're not asking these other lifestyle issues like, gee, do you yell a lot? But imagine going to a football game and really getting into it and just screaming and getting, that kind of stimulation of your thyroid. It really does release a lot of thyroxine. So if you did that on a regular basis and you're yelling.
Let me, this is just, I know we're getting to the end, but let me just ask you this, because that's a very interesting point. But isn't the context or the emotion behind it relevant? Like a football game, that's a fun activity. Like, even if I'm mad, my team's losing, but yeah, they scored a touchdown, woo! Or you're at a concert and you're screaming, I love you, this is awesome. Right? And you're happy about it, as opposed to maybe yelling because, oh my God, this is going to be a plane accident, or whatever, or you're yelling you're in a bad relationship, so you're yelling because you're mad. So wouldn't the energy behind the thyroid vibration matter?
I don't think it would to the thyroid from that point of view, but I think there would be obviously different hormones involved. If you're probably your adrenaline will still be high when you're screaming for your team as when you're screaming in fright. But I think in any event, the mechanical issue of just overstimulating the thyroid is going to do its damage. Now, if it's associated with a problem that you're repeatedly yelling, like if you're in a fight with a spouse and you're yelling at them all the time, or you got issues and you're just aggravated. A lot of people, when they're aggravated and stressed, they yell. And and they go through a period of life like that. And if you discover that this is what you're doing, and now you suddenly, after a month of being stressed out and doing a lot of yelling, now you have a thyroid problem, you want to reevaluate that. The thing is, whether you have both hypo or hyperthyroid, the first thing to ask is, have I been changing any of my behaviors lately regarding the way I use my voice?
How happy am I?
Sure.
Be honest.
But that might not affect, if you're vibrating though, that might not matter if you're not making vibrational differences, whether you're happy or less happy. I mean, we have to have like, am I screaming more as a result of being happy or sad? Am I using my voice any differently? Like a lot of women, one woman, for example, a good anecdotal example is she got divorced. She was depressed. She used to sing all the time. She stopped singing. And when I told her about this, she said, this makes so much sense because I used to sing all the time. And when I stopped, I started, a year later, I got hypothyroid. So it takes time for the effects of these things. And then she started singing again, and she started feeling better, and it comes back. Yeah, it's not an immediate thing. So I would give it about a couple of weeks of changing your behavior to see if you start feeling any differently. Keep in mind, if you go to the doctor, the first thing they'll do is give you radioactive iodine and get you on that track, because they love putting people on thyroxine for life. It's one of those real good money makers for medicine, a lifetime medication, and you can't go off it because you've lost your thyroid. So you don't want to go there unless you have to. And first, try changing your vocalization pattern. Try to become more of what you used to be. If you change, if you're doing more yelling, do less. Doing less talking, do more, and see how that affects you. And then, if you need to go to a doctor, you can. But keep in mind that even their diagnostic methods are if they use radioactive iodine on you, I would say no. I would not let anybody put radioactive iodine in my thyroid. I really wouldn't.
Well, a big part of this show, and I know a big part of your work is, just trying to look at how we're living and our lifestyle, and, what we can influence naturally, and any kind of drug or surgical procedure, hopefully, is a last resort if necessary, after you've exhausted all the other possibilities.
Well, yeah, but the problem is medicine gets paid for that.
So we know that, but hopefully you're not there in the first place.
Yeah, well, they're not going to tell you what's getting you there.
Of course.
And they're not going to address that.
That's why shows like mine are here.
Exactly.
And people like you exist.
Yes,
Sydney, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. As usual, we could talk for hours, and there's so much more I'd love to chat with you about. I know everybody wants to learn more. You've written some great articles on this, and you've got a bunch of other work. I've referred to episode 119. Everyone has to listen to the link between bras and breast cancer. But Sydney, how can... Actually, any last thoughts in closure today? You've said a lot of wonderful little snippets, but any just last thoughts that maybe haven't been said that makes you feel complete today?
Well, I don't know if I'll ever feel complete with one last thought. I feel like I got to keep on thinking. I think everybody needs to keep on thinking and realize that the culture is not necessarily your friend, that it could be in conflict with your natural needs, and that no one is going to look out for you like you can. And if they get paid to do it, they have a conflict of interest. So you just can't, you got to rely on yourself. And with the internet, you could do research. There's so much out there that you shouldn't ever say, I don't know what that means. There are ways of figuring it out and judging it yourself.
Depending on the search engine you use, because that's a business too, and it's going to be curated what it allows you to see. So what I always tell people is, be your own detective and doctor, but you got to always consider the source, and you just have to be an astute consumer. You have to know where your information is coming from.
And don't trust the fact checkers, because the fact checkers need to be checked too.
And that's my point. You know what I mean? You got to always consider the source, and the fruit by the tree, right? So, is the person walking the talk? Are they the living example of what you want to be like? Is a good one. So, Sid, thank you so much. How can people find out more about the connection between the thyroid and the voice and the vibration and sound in all of your work?
Well, I hope you'll be posting an article that I wrote on academia.edu for that. And on that academia website, I have about 90 other articles that I've written on all sorts of things. Some of them are fun. Some of them are extremely serious. All of them are hopefully going to be change the way you think about things. And that's sort of my goal, is to change the way, to turn the light on. I think, we have to realize, maybe this is a closing statement. I think instead of lamenting the fact that the world is as dark as it is, we have to be happy of the fact that there are people who do turn on the light. Or maybe putting it differently, watch the donut, not the hole. So we have to keep positive. And that's an old expression,
That's great.
Watch the donut, not the hole. And that's what
it's not
we have
eat
to
the
do.
donut,
And
not the hole. It's watch,
it's
watch the donut.
not the hole.
I like those little whole donut things. Remember when those first came out? They were a big hit. Somebody was pretty smart. Rather than throwing away this stuff, let's just sell it.
That's right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but
No,
that's great. We always want to end with optimism, because this is about solutions, right? And we could talk about some of the issues, but we want to give people real tools that can really make a difference. So guys, if this helped you, take action. Don't just be like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Do something about it. Apply one of the things that you learned today, or share it with someone who you think needs it. Sydney Ross Singer, thank you so much for being on Awakening Aphrodite again. This has always been so educational and enlightening and inspiring.
Well, thank you for having me, Amy, and I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it, my friend. Well, I have a feeling we're going to have you back on round 3. I don't know. There's so much more to talk about. So,
I'd love to. There's so much more I'm learning every day.
I love it. You're a lot like me. And I do want to say, too, I really do admire your courage that, you said it, that we have to live a full actualized life. We have to be brave, and we have to be brave enough to fear, to not fear looking like the fool and saying things that might sound crazy or silly or whatever, as you have demonstrated. So I think it's very inspiring. And whether you agree with everyone in the world or not isn't the point. It's just, let's keep an open mind and always respect and fight for other people's ability to speak their truth, even if we don't agree. That's the point.
Yes,
in my mind.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
But I happen to agree with a lot of what you said. So that makes it more fun. Let's just put it that way, when we actually agree. All right, everybody. Thanks again for watching or listening. And please share the show. Remember, you can find me on Instagram at FitAmyTV. And make sure you subscribe. I will see you next time. And thanks again, Sydney.
Would you like to support my mission to help empower people all over the world to be all of who they truly are? If so, please subscribe to the show, leave a review on iTunes, and share it with a friend. And if you're looking to take immediate action to align your energy and optimize your health, visit amyfournier.com. Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite. Let's awaken her together in you. I'm your hostess, Amy Fournier, and I already can't wait to be with you again and for you to hear what I have planned for the next show.
Thanks for listening to Awakening Aphrodite with Amy Fournier. To learn more about Amy, check out her website, amyfournier.com. That's AMYFOURNIER.com. You can also check out Amy's live and on-demand virtual fitness and yoga classes, and sign up for her newsletter to receive a free mini ebook of 3 of her top tips for making holistic health a lifestyle. Again, that's amyfournier.com. and get your ebook sent to your email immediately. Connect with Amy on the daily on Instagram at FitAmyTV, FITAMYTV, and watch many of the podcast episodes and subtopic clips on her YouTube channel, which is also FitAmyTV. Enjoy, and we'll see you next time on Awakening Aphrodite.